Hello everyone. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So thanks again for taking time out of your weekend to join this. So the topic for today is governance, which is one of the main components in IAM space, which is completely developed into a product these days, which is called IGA, Identity Governance and Administration. So that would be the topic, but over the course of next few weeks or months, I would be covering other topics in IAM space, but today's topic would be around governance, joiner, and mover lever process, how it works. Since I got DMs from different people with different backgrounds over the Reddit post of mine, I thought I'll prepare a quick slides set. Okay, let's get started. So we will quickly scan through these slides just to understand how, if anybody has not seen how IAM is set up in an IAM environment, these slides give you a rough idea. But like I said, over the coming weeks, we could do more sessions to cover different topics in detail, along with some of the topics I would be covering in the video format as well. So the flow would be like this. The intro is pretty much about me. And then we go about a reference architecture, how an IAM is set up along with different components in IAM, a full-fledged IAM, how it looks in an enterprise. And then the core topic of today, which is the governance. One of the main key requirements in the governance is making joiner, mover, lever process automated using the IAM or IGA. The next thing is, there was always a confusion between the terms IGA, Identity Governance and Administration, and the broader term IAM. So we will also address that confusion. And then we go through the demo, which is the most part of this discussion. And then we can also discuss about AI, impact of AI, non-human identities, and whatever clarifications you have. So quickly about me, I've started working after my graduation within IT space directly in the IAM. So I worked across various sectors, and mostly some of the products I worked on are those that you see on the screen. SailPoint, Ping Identity, midPoint. midPoint is basically I picked up last 4 weeks back because it's open source. I wanted something to demo it in some of the videos I'm making. And Keycloak, of course, many of you might have seen it. It's also an open source product in the access management area. Okta. So I'm based in Zurich, Switzerland. Over the last, I just mentioned certifications because certifications is one of the topics everybody wants to be aware of in IAM space, and I've seen discussions about what certification somebody needs to get into IAM. So that's something I wanted to address. We will also discuss towards the end. So let's take a reference to set a baseline for this discussion if somebody is not aware how IAM works. So the problem every company has, in this example, I've taken an example of a company which has 5,000 employees, let's say, be it internal or contractors, around 30 to 40 applications deployed across the IT landscape. And of course, people joining the company, leaving the company every other week or every other month. And when it is a small company, everything can be done manual or with a little bit of automation with a bespoke IAM solution. But when things get this big, it's not anymore. It doesn't make sense to automate it using a bespoke solution. That's why IAM products came into picture, and that's how identity and access management, and mainly now the identity and governance came into picture because of the compliance requirements, AI agents, and everything that comes along with the regulatory requirements. So when a company this big, they mainly need to address three problems from the governance perspective. One is how to give right access to the right person on their day one so that they can start their job on the day one itself. And when somebody changes the position within the company, let's say 2 months later or 2 years later, when they get promoted or when they take the intercompany transfer, how does access get redefined for them or reassigned for them? And of course, as part of the an employee leaving the company, their access must be revoked or removed. This is a reference architecture. I try to bring in all the components that an IAM system consists of. So, for example, let's talk about the components that are core within the IAM. One is IDM, Identity Management. Nowadays, it's called as IAM platform because most of the solutions are going SaaS. They are trying to call that as IAM platform because they can plug in other things along with identity management into IAM, this IAM platform. And the second component is access management, which is mainly there for single sign-on across the applications within an IT landscape, if it's a company within the company. And of course, it deals with other things like accessing your partner portals or your customer portals using federation. That's this component in yellow. And there is an oversight layer that sits on top of IAM platform and the applications it integrates with along with access management. That's the governance layer or the oversight layer, which must take care of what IAM is doing, and it should be able to give an oversight to auditors, compliance officers, and it should provide capabilities for product owners of an IAM to do the certifications and get the reports and everything. So that's the identity governance and administration layer you see on the top. So what IAM does, mainly it integrates with the HR system of a company. It could be more than one HR system in case if it's only employees. It's one HR system like SuccessFactors, Workday, or Orange HRM. And then the data from HR system flows into IAM, and then IAM creates accounts and gives access on the target applications like Active Directory, Azure AD, like the cloud apps like Salesforce, whatnot, and also the databases and some of the legacy applications within the IT landscape. And the end users access all these applications, including the IAM and all the HR systems using access management. In some companies, users will use the Windows login to use the other applications within the company. So any questions on this slide before we quickly move forward? Okay. So the next slide mainly talks about, which is the core topic for today, where we will also see demo of these use cases. So joiner, mover, lever, in short, you hear the term JML processes whenever you talk about IDM, identity management use cases. So the joiner process mainly defines how an employee or a contractor joins the company and their access is granted automatically based on the process workflows defined within the IAM system. Mover process mainly deals with the changes an employee goes through their life cycle within the company. Like for example, when they get promoted or when they are assigned to a different department or a different manager, their access will not be same. So IAM system or the IGA component within IAM system must take care of reassigning that access, the user's access, so that the old access is not anymore there, and the new whatever they require for the new job or new role within the company is applied. So the last use case is the lever. Um, it's mainly to revoke the access and mainly also delete the accounts of the user after they leave the company. So IGA versus IAM, they are not the same thing, even though like the vendors talk about these terms interchangeably during their presentations and also their documentation. So IAM mainly deals with the concept of how you can implement it, how a particular functionality is done. For example, provisioning, a joiner mover lever process, how it is implemented, authentication or single sign-on, along with the applying stronger factors of authentication and your federation within the company or with your partners or customers. Also about other topic like role management, which is a big thing when the company is bigger or enterprise is bigger, and of course managing the user stores and the master data within the company. IGA is about oversight, like I said, like we have seen in the architecture diagram, which basically provides capabilities of reviewing the access that has been given by the IDM component within the IAM, and through the means of access certifications and quarterly or yearly reviews. Also, it enforces some of the policies like in means of SOD policies or preventive policies, where before the access is given, it mainly assesses if the particular user needs to have a role. In case if they should not have, what kind of exceptions should be applied for that. Of course, IGA mainly also provides the audit trials and the reporting functionalities, so that when an external auditor or an internal auditor comes in, they are readily available and reduces a bunch of workload or the manual processes for the people dealing with the auditors. So those are the core functionalities, but there are of course extended functionalities of both these spaces within the IAM. So like I said, you have to implement even before we talk about IGA. So there are organizations which are not so compliant they don't have to be compliant with so many regulations, like small industries and industrial companies. So they don't really talk about IGA so much, but financial and regulatory institutions, they must implement IGA. So you cannot do IGA without IAM. So, but since the topic of today is governance, I thought we could also talk about what happens and what I have seen without IGA before. IAM space was full of use cases like not use cases, the problems or issues like orphan accounts. Nobody knows if somebody leaves a company. Until then, they would be working on some applications using service accounts or non-human identities. And somebody, if they leave, then those accounts are not reassigned to somebody who is active or owning the particular application or that service. So those accounts end up as orphans. That's what the term orphan account means, and that is a big problem when the auditor comes in a compliance check. Also privilege accumulation. So for example, like I said, when somebody moves across the departments or some of the admins within the a particular IT application started to get access more and more because of lack of governance and access certifications. So that's a big problem. And even if you end up sending, or as an IAM administrator or a product owner of an IAM system, end up configuring different access reviews every quarter, the process is not simple enough, so that the managers or the reviewers who review the access end up selecting all. If there are around 400, 500 or 300 access items or roles assigned to a particular user, they just select all, and it still happens every day. That's a big problem when the auditor comes in. So governance, the governance component or IGA is taking care of it, but there is still a lot of room to improve there in this space. So what I've seen over the years is mostly when there is a audit failure, because we work in security, and within that is IAM is a small niche, and the budgets are very thin. And when there is a failure or a slap of fine due to a failed audit by an external company or a financial regulatory body, like here it's FINMA in Switzerland, then for the next year the projects get funded to make sure the gaps are filled. That's how I have seen, but it's getting better because of now non-human identities are getting spread over, so the IAM has become much more important nowadays than before. So I have talked about the governance piece on the channel, so I didn't want to repeat it again and demo it again. You just need to click the IAM link, the YouTube link that I provided there, and access for free both these. So I have done extensive demo on these two videos, so you can see in detail if anybody wants to go through those topics. So enough of what we have talked about. Before jumping into demo, is there anything out of last few slides we discussed that you want to talk about, or any questions? Okay, can you guys hear me? Hello? Okay, I heard some sound, that means yes. Okay, now in the demo, we have seen in the reference architecture. So I have set up a simple HR system, like a mock HR system, to showcase and make it easier in the demo. And the IAM system I used is midPoint. I'm not affiliated or partner even with this component. I found out only recently that it's a IGA product, open source, which doesn't need to be licensed or get a pre-approval before I can show it on the public forums. So, but what I realized, it's a good one, but there are other open source tools like OpenIAM, which you could also implement if you are building your own lab. Midpoint itself, I've seen that they have a demo instance, so ready made. You can just log in, but every night I think it gets overwritten. Also, OpenIAM is pretty good. Okay, we will come to the tools, what you can really work on hands-on to get to know the concepts. And since we cannot install Active Directory easily for a demo, I have set up a LDAP directory as one of the systems where IAM or IDM talks to, in this case, so that we can see how a joiner comes into HR system, how IDM or IAM system processes that identity and assigns the role, and then how it goes to the target system, how it provisions to the target system. So here, okay, let me move this here. So this is the HR system that I have written in the React, and this is the IDM or IAM system, and this is the LDAP. So for the sake of this demo, like I've said, this is the HR system. We have these many employees here, like 6. 5 of them are active, 1 is terminated. And in IAM, here I will first show the, okay, I can first show those users. Okay, it logged out. I will first show the same users that we have seen in the HR here. You see more because I'm using this instance for some other videos and some other trainings. Okay, here you see the same employees here, 6 employees, and one of them is disabled. It's disabled. That's the current state of an IAM system. And the 2 applications we have seen, where is it? Here, one is HR needs to be connected to the, and the LDAP needs to be connected to this IGA. So that is connected. It's called resources in midPoint, but in SailPoint and one identity and one login, what other systems like NetIQ or Ping, it's called applications. Or in some they are called as sources, for example, or target systems. So everything is different. As long as you understand the concept, how an application needs to be integrated, how a joiner, mover, or process on a conceptual level works, it's pretty easy. I mean, this terminology you can get it in a day or two as soon as you get to know the product. That's why it's important that we understand the concepts in an IAM space rather than clicking buttons and understanding the product and going through the vendor certifications or documentations. It's very important that you build your foundation with the concepts first, how a particular business process works, joiner works. Okay, coming back to the demo. So there are 2 systems. One is HR system that I have connected. Maybe in one of the future sessions we can actually do even setting up of this. So this one is the HR CSV application. So on the back end, this is a CSV application. Stop me if I'm going too fast. And the next one is the OpenLDAP, which is also open source. You can pretty much build it in your own lab, or so this is an LDAP. So 2 systems are connected, and we see those are the users. What we do right now is joiner. Let's say HR gets a contract signed from a new employee, and they are joining tomorrow. Let's say for the sake of demo, the joiner is pretty simple process, but in companies it is a pretty complicated sometimes, because 2 weeks before the user comes in, user might already enter the data like 1 month, 2 months before of the start date of an employee, like two weeks or 3 weeks before. IAM system must trigger an email to the manager or a end user support or a support desk, so that they get the things ready for the employee when they come in, like the access card and whatnot. So in this case, we just, as an HR, will add an employee here. So let's talk about Mark Twain or Mark Taylor, let's say. Okay, first let me see if there is such a user. Okay, there is a user, I think. Let's say Elon Musk. Okay, let's put him into marketing, and it added 1 employee on the HR system. Now in the actual implementation, or in a full-blown IGA where it is live, it's synced in real time. But for the sake of demo, I wanted to show how IAM or IGA gets this data. So this is by means of tasks here. In some other IDM systems like NetIQ or ping, it could also happen through events, they call it as. So here task, it's also tasks in SailPoint. So if you run this import task, so this basically fetches the data, pulls the data from the HR system that we created here, and gets that user Elon Musk here. So let's see the user. Okay, now the employee 1007 came here, which is 1007. What happens is, so the user entered into IDM. So let's say they start today or tomorrow. For this demo, I kept it joiner simple, but many things happen in the joiner process itself. In this particular joiner process, what happens is the system assigns a basic role for an employee, like they get access to a Active Directory so that their mail is enabled, and they get an Azure AD account, whatnot, for the critical systems. So in this case, the employee role is assigned automatically. So if we go to the role, the employee role, okay, I forgot to add it here. Let's add it. Okay, sorry, here. So here in the employee role, it gives access to a LDAP, which is the Active Directory, let's say in our demo, which means as soon as user comes into IDM system, on the start date, a role is assigned, and that role gives an access to an application. It could be more than one applications. It can be many in a real live environment. So if we go to now, user should have, let's go back to the user here. So if you go to the user Elon, you see they have 2 accounts. So this is how IGA displays what accounts they have on the target systems. One is the HR account, which is their main account, and then the target account. So if you go to the this is just a UI to the LDAP. So if you refresh here and go to the people, so here you see Elon, he got just created. That's the joiner in simpler terms. So before we go to the lever, is there something you guys want to see or discuss here? Please, let's make it conversational or interactive. Sorry? Yeah, now it's better, please. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you configure roles and everything, and then you just go to tasks here and create it here. So then you can say whether it's a live sync task that I talked about. As soon as there is an employee created here, if it's created as a live sync task to that HR application, it pulls the data in real time. And here we just kept it as reconciliation task, and so here you just select the application, for example, like this. Here I selected HR. It's pretty much same in other IGS as well. So that's how it's created, this import task. If you click here, you will see pretty much the same UI I just have shown. Here is the HR. Is that the same thing you asked? Okay, no worries. So that's the joiner, and on the left as an admin you will see like what roles exist. These are all needs to be set up. Like it's we can go later into each of those topics in the future sessions. Okay, now what I want to do is, so let's go to the lever process. So the lever process is somebody gets an end date for their contract in a company, like the, so in this case we take, there are usually two cases of lever in most organizations. One is lever exiting on a particular date, like 1 month, 2 month after their notice period, and in some exceptional cases, which is also an important one in the compliant um compliant related organizations like financial organizations, which is immediate termination case, where for some reason HR decides that, or a manager decides that some employee cannot work from today or tomorrow. As soon as they come in, they needs to be immediately terminated. So that's the use case we took it here. But we could, I mean, the lever process also is a normal lever process, happens like 1 month down the line. And what IAM system will do is 2 weeks before it sends a mail to the manager and end user desk to collect their laptop. Somebody is leaving, make sure everything is there. There is an exit interview with an HR. All these are done. So those emails also goes from the IAM system. So in this case, we will trigger a simple lever, which means as soon as somebody terminated here, the IAM system gets aware of it and the account gets deleted. In most lever cases, in a normal lever cases, they get disabled. Like 1 week later, they get the account get deleted, because in some cases the employee might join back because they might be an external employee, or they can come in as an internal employee from external contract. Okay, in this case, that's what happens. To keep it simple, let's go to the HR system. So here, let's terminate John from finance. So they get terminated. And if we go to the user status, John is still enabled. You see it here, enabled. And now what we will do, we will go and get the sync done. So we will go to the sync from the HR system into midPoint. And now let's go to the user. Let's see what happens. So John is disabled. So they are disabled. And along with that, they also lost the role of an employee, which means they are no longer an employee, which implicitly means it basically needs to remove or disable access from all the systems that an employee has an access to. That's why you no longer see LDAP system here. So if you go to the John is here, if you refresh, so the employee John is deleted. So the one other thing we need to see is, like, for example, the user itself, in most cases, they are there in the IAM system for 2 years, 3 years, based on the data retention for audit reasons, or even 10 years, as with the all the history of their activity in the system or in the company. So here today at local time here 4:38, we triggered a lever. So if you go to the, this is the audit events. So here you see user was disabled within midpoint, and the employee role was unassigned. Due to the employee account unassigned, the account from OpenLDAP, oh, let's go back. sorry, something happened. Maybe no memory on my system. Okay, let's go to the history. Okay, so the as a result of unassigned role, the OpenLDAP account was deleted. So that's why you don't see new value anymore. They are deleted. This is the audit record. So this can be pulled out of the IAM system in whatever you want, either using an API, you could get a fancy report, or you could use the out of the box that the product provides to get the report, so that you don't have to do everything manually. You could basically automate these reports so that auditor comes in, give them an auditor role into IGA system, auditor themselves pull the data and verifies it, and they can go to the respective application owner if there is a problem with the a particular access, why it was not removed or why it was not disabled. So that's the joiner and lever. Like I said, there is one mover use case. In most organizations, what happens with the mover is when somebody changes the manager or a department, an access review is triggered. Access review is, it's a kind of an activity that goes to the new manager or the application owner, where they will see, okay, this user or an employee changed their role or a department, and they needs to review the access again. So that's something called as certifications here. It could also be in this case, when there is a trigger you need to configure, then that basically triggers an access certification to the either a manager or a security officer that somebody has changed, somebody has moved mainly within the organization. So in this case, we can define what a certification needs to contain, whether it should contain all the roles and everything. So I'm going a bit into detail here, but those are covered within this video, access certification video. Please go through that. I don't want to confuse here. Basically, we covered there. To keep time in check, I just did not repeat the same thing here. Okay, so we discussed now about joiner and lever. Any questions or points to discuss? Okay, so sorry, like I said, the reason I wanted to do this session was because last few weeks I had to talk to my team. There are two new joiners and I had to talk to them about the scales, because they were coming to me about how they can ramp up their skills from one of them were working in the IT in a support role. One of them came out of the university, but they were pretty much motivated to learn the skills. So I told them basically these points I just copied from the notes I was talking to them. Everybody, I also see on Reddit or also on YouTube, everybody talks about tools, what certifications they need to get into IAM. But I think what I learned over the years is it's much more, the problems are much more structural and complex. So if you could think IAM from business point of view, like what are the problems that IAM is solving? Joiner, why joiner? Because the HR teams and different teams that are involved, like IT teams, each application has each application, they don't talk to each other. So there needs to be a system that gels or overlaps all these together. That's why IAM came into picture, IGA came into picture, and joiner process, something called joiner process came into picture, so that HR doesn't have to always talk to IT. They just go into their system, like SuccessFactors, their HR system, and then they don't have to worry about. But the things will flow. But like I said, each organization, each company has a very specific requirements about joiner, within the joiner, they have specific requirements about whether it's a contractor, whether it's an employee, whether it's a temporary subcontractor who has like 1 week to work within the company. So they are never fully resolved. It's an ongoing thing. So if you can learn the concepts on a very deep level, irrespective of which product. So like I said, there are open source products like midPoint, OpenIAM, even like Okta is very, very high level in the sense of it's a SaaS product. It's getting there. Like free, you can use the free trial account or Auth0, which is also bought by Okta. You could pretty much get it running in case you are not so used to setting up a lab. It's fine. You can set up the Auth0 trial account and still learn the joiner mover lever because the concepts are important. In the end, like every company these days requires, since the second point is mainly about IGA, you end up talking about IGA and implementing. If you are into pre-sales, you end up writing RFPs around it. If you are into consulting, you talk to customers and go to customers. They are struggling with audit problems, or there is so much debt with respect to requirements that there's so much backlog. As a consultant, you can go in and solve that as long as you understand the concepts. And with AI agents, like we discussed earlier, we can go a bit more in detail here. There is a lot of pressure, Ashlesh. So we talked about it. Sorry if I spelled your name wrong, but there is, like, I am working at 2 customers in Zurich here, where they are heavily Copilot deployed, and also they are deploying some bot like chatbots for every application, so that manages that basically connects to their document management system, and the team doesn't have to go through the documentation. They just ask that. So these are all the AI agents, but at this point in time, we manage it mostly. We treat it like a non-human identities, which are previously called as robotic accounts, which even before or even still now they are called as technical or service accounts. So AI agents are given with an identity, and the identity will have a life cycle like joiner, mover, lever, but at a technical level, one human identity will be assigned to that. So that's the part of the life cycle of an AI agent or a services. But there are also the impact of AI with respect to the configuration management within the IGA space, where, like, until now we have to do every small thing, the configuration. The customer, even though they have 1 or 2 guys managing the IAM system, they are not knowledgeable enough to implement the IAM, even connecting to an HR system, how to map the attributes from a first name, last name, for example, to an attribute within the IAM. Those were the things even we used to work on. Now not anymore, because there are AI agents being deployed. For example, in SailPoint there is a 1 or 2 plugins like Arbor AI. I think Arbor Pilot. I forgot the name. There is an AI within the UI itself. So I work at a customer with with one of the SailPoint cloud instance, and they pretty much are doing the basic configurations themselves. So yeah, it has an impact, but at the end, like I said, with the non-human identities and managing those AI agents is becoming a big backlog in terms of the problems to solve. So there is always new thing comes. When we started back in 2010, it was mainly enabling single sign-on across the applications, because each application used to have their own login. So everybody, instead of remembering their password, all companies started with solving the problem of single sign-on. Now it's becoming a commodity, because single sign-on is pretty much standardized using SAML and OIDC. So it's not anymore, but the new problems always comes in, like solving the problems of AI. So as long as you learn the skills and the concepts, I feel we are okay because they are transferable to any new tool. It takes time to know the buttons where to click, to know the API language or API of that particular API syntax of that particular IAM product, but it doesn't really change the underlying concept. So please try to look at the concepts, know about, even if it's fine, even if you just pick one product, try to understand from the concepts or the process point of view why a particular product is solving that issue, rather than how to solve that issue, how to solve a requirement with that product. Because once you lose that product and you have to move up the career, the products will not be there. So that's pretty much my rambling. Sorry for that if I went too far. Okay, so and since we have like 10 minutes, I actually kept it for 90 minutes, 60 to 90 minutes, but now we could really go into Q&A. So please feel free to
Yeah,
say
Anshuman,
something. We
thanks
can
for the
discuss.
session.
Let's make it
Yeah, one
an
question
interactive
related to the non-human
session if you have
agents.
time.
So, you mentioned that we treat them as normal robot accounts, right?
Yeah.
But when you say robot accounts, we know exactly what they do and we can log their activities. But when it comes to AI, can we truly log what AI is actually doing? Because it has connectivity to a lot of endpoints, right? How can we collectively see what the agent is doing?
Yeah, I mean, even that's the problem with the robotic or service accounts, right? What service accounts is what we manage today, even with the AI agents, is we give them, we control the access through an IGA or IAM system. Even the service account, what it does on the target system, let's say, as if it's not connected to an IAM system, even today there is a problem of oversight. We don't see what's happening related to that service account within that application. That's why PAM came into picture, which is privileged access management. Sorry for another term, but PAM came into picture, and nowadays, um, since IGA and IAM becoming so bigger, the products are not able to handle it. That's why they are acquiring PAM products and trying to take care of activity monitoring of these AI agents on the specific applications or the endpoints that an AI agent is connected to using that PAM module. It's more of a PAM topic slowly to monitor the endpoints, the activity on the endpoints. Um, and since most of the product like SailPoint, Ping, One Identity, and Okta, they are all SaaS based IGS. They call it IGS, but I don't agree because they don't do what an on-prem IGA does. But it will get there. They are also trying to buy or acquire PAM vendors or integrate with vendors like CyberArk and Beyond Trust, all these. And there are some small companies that they acquired, like Okta and also Ping acquired recently. So with those modules are mainly meant for monitoring the activity of the agents' identities. Did I make sense? Okay.
Yes, yes, it makes sense.
So I will be doing more sessions like this based on the topics that I see on the IDM
Yeah, sorry, I have a
space.
question.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm currently in incident response, right, and looking to pivot to IAM. What what advice or what's the best way to pivot?
What you currently do, like, are you hands-on with any of the work tools that you currently work at in your role?
No, no, not at this role, but in the past, the previous role I was,
Okay.
But it was minimal. But now I do
Okay.
just mainly incident response.
Okay. The reason I asked is mainly because if you are hands-on guy and you want to really learn the IM products, how they work, usually having an on-prem instead of SaaS-based solution in your lab. Like for example, you don't have to install. If you really want to learn the concepts, I learned that midPoint as live demo, this one. Here you can just log in and see that. But it gets overwritten. That's what I learned in the last 4 weeks. I started to use this. But you could also, like I said, if you really want to understand the concept so that when you get into the role of IAM, you understand you could do with SaaS products as well. You connect to an HR. So you can basically, I wrote in 5 minutes, you can ask an AI, it will write an HR application with a CSV on the back end. And then you can connect it to an Auth0, even if it's a SaaS. You just connect it to an application there. And other than that, certifications you can do, like SailPoint certifications or Auth0, Okta certifications. But as long as I don't think these days that land you a real role, as long, I mean, if you can't talk to an interviewer about a particular concept and try to explain that. If you are getting into an hands-on role, I'm talking about, if you are into pre-sales, then pre-sales is all about talking about a particular, pitching about a product. In case if you want to get into a vendor product team, like a SailPoint team or a Ping team, whatever team, then you need to be thorough with the product.
Got it. Is there a cert that is vendor agnostic, entry level that you recommend?
Because it's cloud, you can try. It's from ISC Square, which is there are really in security space. I really trust only these two. I don't trust anything else. I mean, vendor based ISACA and ISC Square, because they have a credibility behind them. I've seen them standing there since 2008-10. So CCSP is from them. That's the starting one. I think I also saw ISC Square, SSCP, I don't know. But also on the product side, you can, if you want Azure, it's SC300. But that gets you into a role of administrator. So if you are okay with getting initially into an administrator role, which basically aligns with what you are currently doing, and also Okta professionals, I think Okta or Auth0 or what SaaS the companies are dealing with currently in your company or in your area. Did it make sense?
Yeah, appreciate it.
Okay. Like I said, there is one more IAM. This one, OpenIAM. This is also open source. So get accustomed to the concepts more along with the product. Okay. Before you go, can I just ask feedback? Nothing else. Just there is a check feedback of what topics you want me to cover next, and how was the session for you? That's all.
How will we know if there is a next session?
There is a Discord. You will definitely know on the Discord, and I will try to make it as a post in Reddit. Let's discuss there, and I will definitely come when I have some time with one more topic. Have a good evening. Bye bye.